Go.
Hello, racing fans. I'm Tom Amello alongside of Michael Kipnis, the Wizard. Welcome to this week's edition of Get Tied On, brought to you by Wizard Race and Sports.com. 4 days in the books, Michael. We all sat ready to be rained out for 4 straight days, and the weathermen behaved like handicappers, right?
Yeah,
They got 1 out of 10.
I was surprised that the opening day they took the races off the turf,
Yeah.
but they did. And Thursday, it's been very hot and humid here. And it's kept the crowds down, especially on Sunday.
Oh yeah. Let's put it this way: there are 2 things that affect attendance. One is the moanings and the bemoanings and the warnings of the weather guys. They can cut attendance by at least a third. And monsoons, heavy rains, hazy, hot, and humid cuts the crowd. But the racing is good. And while the crowds may have been smaller than anybody would have liked, the handle hasn't been.
No, it's Saratoga. They'll even bet the 3-horse field that we saw on opening day in race number 2.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about those first 4 days. 4 different days of racing. The off the turf. What do you got for that day?
Well, the first day, race 1 was the always carded 20 claimer going a mile and an eighth.
Right.
There were 3 voided claims in the race, Tom, and the vets are doing their job protecting owners that are claiming horses, and these horses come out of the race with some sort of issue that they've spotted. So we're seeing more voided claims now because they're a lot tougher with these HISA issues, these HISA rules.
And another thing, when we're getting scratches in the morning, they're indicating whether it's a vet scratch or a private scratch for illness or some other reason, which
Right.
I think is informative and important.
It's really good. I mean, all this plays into the safety of horses and protecting the owners from claims of horses that get injured.
Okay, day 2.
Race 2, 3-horse field, won by a 3 to 5 shot. I hope we don't see many of those this meet because they're unbettable races. Race 3, there was a first-time starter that was actually claimed that won the race. And my hat's off to a trainer and the connections to be able to take a shot on a horse that's never run before. Maybe they saw something in the works, but that's what happened. Joe Sharp claimed a horse out of race 3. Race 6 was the first of 3 horses exiting a race at Churchill, an auction maiden race.
Right.
And that was a race that my horse ran in, a horse that me and my wife own, named the Feisty One, and it's proven to be a key race. One of the second-time starter from Al Stall wins that race, and there was another horse that came back to win out of the race, and a second-place finish came back to run second in a stake. So it makes that a key race. In race 9, Phil Bauer comes up from Kentucky for Rigney, only private trainer for Rigney, wins with Warrior Johnny. And in race 10, Queen's MG at 44 to 1. That was 2 to 1 in his his prior start off a private purchase for Safi Joseph, comes back to win. Sherbini, who ran second, comes out of that race, out of that auction maiden race, and runs second.
Yeah, we should talk about that Queen's MG race. I mean, the favorite complexion, I think it was somewhat compromised, or at least he was fractious. I think he tossed Johnny V twice, and they were loading him in the gate. There was some controversy, as the Brits say, as to whether he was fully in the gate when the gate latch was let go. And Danny Gargan let everyone on the planet know about his displeasure to the cost of about $1,000.
Knowing Danny Gargan, the $1,000 was a small price to pay for him to voice his opinion.
To get his to get it out of his system. Anyhow, yeah.
July 12th, the second day, Friday, I had no bias.
Yep.
I had no bias on the opening day. Race 5, Disco Dino, 34 to 1 shot from Finger Lakes. Anthony Ferrara and
Back salute to him.
Yep. I like when the Lakes come in and take the money at a big price.
Well, yeah.
Race 6, Classic Time. Cassie won 2 maiden races opening week. This was the first of the 2. Race 8, top horse for me, who I really liked. Striker Has Dial from Horatio de Paz, 5 to 1. Chase did all the dirty work for the Perfect Trips inside winner, Miss Justified.
He's he's off to a good start, and he's a good trainer. Really is sharp.
Yeah, I really like him when his barn goes good. All the horses run well. Saturday, third day, I had no bias once again. Race 1, Dare to Breeze, a Cassie maiden, wins for fun from Churchill, another Churchill shipper. These maidens at Churchill have to be respected. Race 7, Dallas Stewart, our friend Dallas Stewart, wins with a first-time starter, ridden by Luis Saez from the rail, showed big speed, showed it in a work prior to the race, scores at a nice price.
Dallas is as cagey as the day is long.
Absolutely. And when he gets the money, he deserves it.
Yeah, that's right.
Race 9, this is our trip horse. We'll talk about it in the final segment. It was a turf race. Race 10, the Diana. Chad Brown had 5 horses, owned the race basically, but he only hit the board with one of them, and that was the winner, who wired the field, got away with a slow pace. That was White Beam. Set of moderate fractions and wired on the front end, stretching out in distance. Gave Chad Brown, I think, his ninth Diana winner. Unbelievable. What could you say?
You know, I like Gina Romanica in that race. I thought she had a chance to run big at a price, and she just gets nipped for the place. When Evie Jets opted to sit, the race was just about all over, right?
Oh,
and
yep.
You know,
great ride on the front end.
Absolutely.
I think Pratt was aboard White Beam, if I'm not mistaken. Race 11, the stake race, was at the Adirondack.
Yep.
Moplex for Jeremiah Engelhardt wires the field. He would not have won. Moplex would not have won if the favorite in that race, Menti, was scratched. Moplex got away with a clear lead, set the pace, and was all out to
Studley
Do Right, top pick. Once that Mentee was scratched, I was worried Studley Do Right would not have the pace to run at. He just ran out of ground.
What do you think when they come back, Moplex, Studley Do Right, going, because they're going to go longer?
Moplex actually is a bet against, in my opinion. If there's any pace, Moplex is done. Sunday, no bias again. Race 4, our friend Phil Bauer, Mighty Madison up from Kentucky, even money, found the 7 furlongs just a step too far. And watch that horse cutting back in distance, maybe later in the meet or back at Churchill or Keeneland.
Yeah, and Phil Bauer's no secret any longer.
No, he wins a high percentage of races at Saratoga, especially hits the board with a high percentage. Race 5, It's a Miracle. Of the 4 days, the first 3 were weak for me. The 4th day, Sunday, this was my best pick of the meet so far. It's a Miracle wins at 4 to 1. Impressive. Second time out, showed improved speed. In race 6, Deep Satin was impressive winner on the turf. I have to say that Cherie DeVoe barn, the opening week has been really live. She's an excellent trainer. She has David and Gordo, her husband, behind her, helping her. The two of those are a dynamic duo. Race 8, Unstable Prince, David Jacobson, crafty trainer, wins at a big price with Ramon Vasquez aboard. Ramon Vasquez, certainly a under-the-radar rider. He's going to ride for most of Jacobson's live piece. I hope to put him on my horse on Sunday. I like how he rides. He rode Lone Rock in the Breeders' Cup. Lone Rock, very good tactical speed rider.
Before you leave, to say that David Jacobson is a crafty trainer is a near understatement, because I remember when he won the New York Turf Rider steeplechase at 17-1 with a claimer. So Crafty does not, in my estimate.
I like the guy. Well,
I'm not saying I
like the guy. The guy,
Cagey. Cagey better than Crafty.
Cagey, whatever. Anybody that traces back to my buddy Jacob, is someone that I keep an eye on at this meet. And Ramon Vasquez will ride first call for him.
Buddy Jacobson, redundant, but go on.
Race 9, Star of Mystery, Charlie Appleby. What could you say? The guy's unbelievable. He's come here loaded with a lot of stock. He's the main guy for Godolphin, gets the job done. This one was ridden by Pratt. Great ride, middle move. They ran the 3/4 in 11-1, and this horse middle moved into that pace and drew off. This is a great horse. His horses look great. Terrific ride by Pratt to get the job done.
I think you have to watch that race once or twice again, especially the head-on, because that horse comes around the turn and is widest at the top of the stretch. And Pratt says, all right, let's go. Goodbye. Kicks in, gone. Quickens, as they say.
Right.
Quickens.
An earlier race on that card, we'll talk about it on a final segment, was that dead heat debacle. And then race 10, the DQ of 25-1 shot brainstorming. But we'll talk about our opinions of that in our third segment.
Debacles and DQs to finish today's Get Tied On. We're going to take a break, and when we're back,
interview is up. Is
our interview? Our interview?
Not
our interview. The interview is
the
up.
interview, and then we'll come back for our third.
What he said. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the interview part of our show, and it's an honor to have you on the show, Ramon. Ramon Dominguez is my guest, and before we go back to your younger days, I have a story to tell you that's pretty funny. So every morning I go to Starbucks on Broadway. They reopened it, and at 6 o'clock in the morning, every morning, there's jockey agent William Castle and now his rider, Ramon Vasquez. We kind of hold court, right? We drink our coffee. Today, Ramon was happy to show me a lollipop that he bought for his 5-year-old son, who chases him around the track, and so we're talking, and it's Billy Castle and Ramon. And we're talking about yesterday's races. He won his first race at Saratoga yesterday, and we're talking about a tough trip he had in a turf race. And I tell him, guess who I'm having on air today on the show? He goes, who? He's sitting right across from me. I go, Ramon Dominguez. And his face lit up, and he said, toque, an expression that he said that when you see each other, you say toque. And because my name is Ramon, like yours. And so he starts, I said to him, I've been doing this professionally for 40 years. And I said, my two favorite riders that I've seen of all time is Angel Cordero and Ramon Dominguez. And he said, Ramon, top of the list, right? He goes, Johnny Velasquez also. And he said, not only was he the greatest, this is from Ramon Vasquez this morning, not only was he one of my favorite, top 2 riders of all time, but the nicest man you can imagine. And that's been the theme of everyone that I've met in this industry for as many years as, you rode to 2013, I think, and then you retired. But no matter what, when I say the name Ramon Dominguez, they always say, as great a jockey as he was, he's a better human being and a great family man. So that was my coffee this morning. So welcome to the show, Ramon.
Thank you so much for having me. And well, what a great compliment. Obviously, I'm very proud of my accomplishments on the track. But anytime that I hear somebody speak well about me in terms of my character, certainly I feel great. And it's really just a reflection of my upbringing, my family. And that's something that certainly kudos to my parents and my family because they're just great, great people. And uh, that is again as important, more important, really, that what you accomplish professionally.
Yeah, and everybody also says, and you know the backstretch like I do. It's hard to separate your career in the profession with your family life. You have to be able to turn one on and off and spend your time with your family and separate the two. And that's, something it appears you've done great over the years because you're a great family man.
Thank you. Yes, and it's something that is one of those things that is easier said than done because we are so absorbed by the profession, and rightly so. I mean, you have to be totally consumed by your riding career, studying the game, studying your mounts. And so, although we may have our priorities, oh, family comes first, or God comes first, and then family, and then my profession, the reality is that it's not really always that way. I mean, we put aside family reunions, birthday parties, and all of that because I have to ride, And so, however, you said it right, which is the importance of really separating yourself from the racetrack and the family. And it's something that takes some time to really create a habit where initially I'll come home and even as my kids were young and I was so happy to see them, but I was sort of carrying still the bad rides that I gave a horse or the race that I should have won. And eventually you learn to, hey, this is really important. At the same time, I'm going to leave it behind. And when you hit that sweet spot and are able to really lead the races regardless of how well they were or how bad they were, behind and just be present with your family is not only good, but it's also healthy and necessary in order to keep this dual profession and family balance correctly.
Yes. So you were born in Caracas, Venezuela. And at 13 years old, around you were about 13, you started riding show horses, right?
Yeah, it was actually around 15, I believe, that I started riding show jumpers. At 13, I was introduced to horse racing, and it was because my dad had back in the days, a machine that people would go and bet the Pick Six, which was the biggest game in Venezuela because it's sort of your lottery to maybe hit a big Pick Six and become rich or have a lot of money. So
Was
he,
it structured like the Pick Six here?
It was.
You have to hit 6 races in a row at that track?
Correct. Yeah, the last 6 races of the day on the weekend were the Pick Six, and it's something that the money will accumulate, and there will be a huge pool.
Supposed to be a carryover, keep
Correct.
carrying over, right?
Yes, and he had to physically take this machine to the racetrack. I went with him, and I remember watching a race live, and the whole colorful horses going by and the sound, and I knew right then and there that I wanted to pursue a career as a jockey. And when the time came for me to really be like, guys, telling my parents that I wanted to do this, they were not too happy about the idea. And they enrolled me in a show jumping school. It wasn't by choice. They kind of, it's a consolation prize. How about you doing show jumping? And I'm glad that I did because I learned so much connecting with the horse. And it was amazing that experience that year riding show jumpers. And then shortly after that, I found out that there was a training center for thoroughbreds. I started going there, learning how to ride race horses, and the rest is history.
So what did you learn from show horses? That carried over to because you went to the hippodrome, right? After that to ride. But what did you learn from the show horses?
Yeah, and this is a great question because what I learned is much as I love what I was doing riding show jumpers and as much as I was learning, is something that I sort of have to put aside because when I started riding race horses, I had to sort of unlearn what I had learned. I say, I want to just do this correctly. So, but it wasn't until years later when I came to the United States and started riding here, again, following the process of riding a racehorse and the way that you're supposed to do it. When I felt more comfortable because I was winning more races, I kind of went back to my beginnings as a show jumper, and it was that connection with the horse, the contact between the horse's mouth and your hands, and those subtle movement and adding pressure in their mouth and releasing that pressure that make a huge difference in terms of getting a horse to relax. And so it was a full circle, and I went back and connected with this young rider, show jumping rider, and what I learned, the principles that I learned back then, and they became instrumental in my new style as a jockey, and really were key in my development as a jockey, just getting a horse to relax.
Who were the riders that you obviously watched riders before you, right? You know, who were some of them that influenced you?
I watched them all, and I learned from all of them to the day that I rode my last horse. And I observed a lot in the world jockeys, even if they were not doing great because perhaps they were not really receiving a big opportunity or riding the right horses. They were still doing things that were unique. I will pay attention. Sometimes I will ask questions, and there is this openness between us where a lot of them will be happy to tell you the things that they do. But at the same time, there were jockeys that, regardless of where they were in the standings, I noticed that they were making certain mistakes. So I was also taking notes of that and making sure that I wasn't going to repeat those mistakes.
Well, Ramon Vasquez told me a story today about, well, you went to Hialeah. That's right, the first track in the United States you rode at, but you also rode at the Mid-Atlantic tracks like Delaware and Maryland. So Ramon was telling me this morning that when he was in the jockey's room, it would be you, Kendrick Carmouche was there, but you would be so gracious in talking to Ramon Vasquez about giving him some advice. And he told me that today.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I was a biggest pain in the neck when it comes to asking questions. When I was an apprentice, I always wanted to learn, and even when I started doing better and winning more races, still I knew that there was so much more to learn, and I wasn't shy to ask questions, come to the corner and ask jockeys. So I feel like that kind of was lost. New jockeys, apprentices to really come and ask the journeymen. But whenever a new jockey or even sometimes established jockey will come and ask a question because perhaps they saw that I was doing something that they would like to emulate or something they would like to learn, I was happy to tell them. And because there were so many before me that were happy to also kind of pass down their experiences. So I feel like it's sort of a catch-22 because there are jockeys who may want to keep their learning experiences sort of a secret, but at the same time you have to go out there. So if I teach the young generation to be a safer rider, a better rider, it's actually something that is going to also benefit me when I'm out there. It's going to be a safer environment.
Right. So you got to Hialeah, right? And it was, so Steve Rushing was your agent, right?
No, at first.
Not at first. Okay.
No, yes, I came in 1996. Yes, the first racetrack that I rode at, it was Hialeah. Beautiful, beautiful Hialeah.
It's so sad that
Yes.
it's not there.
I know, and honestly, for me, it was my first experience at a racetrack. At the time, I was also exercising horses at Calder Race Course, but Hialeah, you couldn't help to just the structure of the grandstand is so incredibly beautiful. The flamingos, you name it, the whole experience is.
It was one of my
Amazing.
favorite tracks.
It was
of any,
beautiful.
you know.
And then as I was learning the history of the sport, knowing all the great horses and horsemen that went through those same racetrack, I mean, it was just amazing to be there. Now, I was an apprentice in Hialeah that first year in 96. And my
So you were
first,
20.
I was almost 20. Yes, I turned 20 that year in November. And the agent that I came and through a mutual friend, we had a sort of an agreement. It was Dewey Chaparro. an agent from Venezuela. He had great jockeys like Douglas Valientes, and I believe that he may have worked with Coa briefly. I'm not sure, but then after me, he worked with Javier Castellano too, if I'm not mistaken. And he had me for a brief amount of time. I was very green. He had a journeyman, Eduardo Nunez. And when the time came, he said, Ramon, I really can continue working with him, with you. And Gil Grael, a very experienced agent from Panama, took my book, and we did well together, but I was so green. So then after that, I started working with an agent. His name was Steve Parras. And for the first time in Hialeah, and I'm talking about a couple years later, I was doing well. I was third in the standings, and he had a good relationship with a trainer, Fran Pasero from Canada. And we'll never forget in Hialeah, the agent Sipara said to me, Ramon, he showed me the condition book and showed me how good the purses were in Delaware Park. He says, Fran Pasero said that he will support us. He's not going to put you on everything, but he's going to write you a lot. We should go to Delaware. And I was not happy with that. I say, I don't want to go to Delaware. I am doing very well for the first time. And I'm glad that he convinced me, say, let's just take a shot. I say, okay, against my will, I went to Delaware, and I was doing well. I actually took a spill, and I had a skull fracture, and that kind of finished the season for me. And I came back the next year and I started doing better. And then from that moment on, I started coming to Delaware, Maryland. And in 1999, I started working with Steve Roshan, and he was the agent that I have for the last 13 years of my career.
It's amazing because that longevity doesn't exist in this game too much. You know, a connection with an agent for many years. There's a lot of turnover.
Definitely. And I was so blessed, and I'm glad that he stayed with me because he was, without any doubt, extremely key for me to be able to accomplish a lot. And I know that my trajectory in the sport would not have been the same if it wasn't for Steve Roshan.
What is a relationship like between jockey and agent?
And that changes depending on who you ask. Sometimes the relationship can be very dysfunctional for some people.
Right.
For Steve and I, we were like brothers. We can both count in one hand the times that we may have a disagreement, and it was never anything big. We had incredible mutual respect. I let him do his job, and he did very well, so I didn't have to get involved. And at the same time, he was great letting me do my job. And one thing is, whenever I made a mistake, which unfortunately happened fairly often, he never criticized me. He just kind of took the good with the bad. He knew that I was doing the best I could. So yeah, we continued to evolve and learn and do better. Well, learning. He was in a different level when we started working together, but we grew together and were able to develop this amazing relationship with the trainers and owners. And oftentimes you have jockeys who really depend on a stable, typically a good barn that rides them a lot. And in my case, due to Steve's relationship and the relationship that we both developed with the trainers and owners, we really rode for everybody. And so from the claiming races, initially that was our sort of bread and butter, and that led to then riding the better horses and for the trainers that had the better stables. And but yes, we were able to ride for everybody, and that was amazing.
Did you go out in the mornings a lot and work horses? Like, was that part of your everyday?
We did. Both Steve and I were pretty hard workers, and we were really hard. And obviously, when towards the end of my career, especially when I was riding in the winter at Aqueduct, I got to a point where by me going out every morning and kind of visiting the barns or even going to the clocker stand, it wasn't doing a whole lot of good. It was maybe getting me in trouble because I was in a lot of demand, and maybe being asked to ride horses that I didn't want to ride. So at the time already there was a transition where the agents could do their work a lot on their cell phone. So I probably will go out and breeze horses, not on a daily basis, 3-4 times a week, but for key barns that were riding me, and they had good horses.
Was Steve Rushing, were you his only rider during that, you know, 20, that 20, well, how many years?
13 years. Yes,
Was
yes.
he your only rider?
I was. There were times when, like at one point, I got hurt, and I was out for 4 months. And he temporarily took Eibar Coa. He also worked with Abel Castellano for a little while. Travis Onkelberger, they did very well together. He had me in Travis, and actually Travis ended up leading jockey Pimlico. They did very well. Travis was an amazing jockey, and he worked with another jockeys, oftentimes to help them as well. For a brief amount of time, but for the most part, he only had me.
And right now he has both Irad and Jose Ortiz.
Incredible.
And that's, I mean, if you think about that, that's just an incredible, you know, I think the three greatest agents I've ever seen, I only knew one personally, Vic Gilardi, Jorge Velasquez's agent, and Chris Antley, and Jorge Chavez, Chop Chop, when he was really in his prime. Vic Gilardi was a great agent. He was a personal friend of mine. Harry Hassick of Willie Shoemaker's agent. Never got to know him, but watched Willie Shoemaker throughout his career. And Steve Rushing. I mean, you know, I'd say those in my lifetime, three, maybe there's another one, but the three that I'd consider, you know, elite.
Yes, and I mean, you mentioned agents who are before my time in the sport. Throughout my career, I obviously got to meet a lot of great agents: Joe Ferrer, Ron Anderson, you name it. There are quite a few, Tony Matos, but the truth is, it's difficult for me to compare, and there's really no.
Well, you had that long relationship like brothers with
Yes.
with him, so it's hard to compare when you really don't work for another agent and get to know who, you know, what they're all about.
So true, but honestly, I don't know that it can get any
Any
better
better?
than
No, you
Steve
can't-
Rushing.
You
No.
can't get any better.
Yeah.
You must have gotten to know Edgar Prado a lot, because I was a big fan of Edgar Prado. I thought he was great. I mean,
Well, actually, Edgar Prado, yes, I met him in my early years at Delaware Park 98 and so, because he will be riding in Maryland and Delaware. Whenever he came to Delaware Park, it was for me like, wow, a big deal to see Edgar Prado, because he was doing incredibly well, winning standings in the nation. But at the time, he had Steve Rushing as his agent.
Oh, really?
Yeah, his agent, I'm sorry. Yes. So Edgar was already making trips to New York and establishing himself as a New York jockey. So him and Steve came to an end working together, because Steve had a new family, or was starting his family, and they were rooting in Maryland. So it was more of a family decision that led to Steve staying in Maryland, and Edgar was already ready to go to New York. And that opened the opportunity for me, thank God, where Steve asked me to be his jockey. And I can't say enough about how incredibly blessed I was about that.
he was some rider, Edgar Prado. He was really great.
Excellent,
Right.
excellent jockey, and he accomplished so much, and really opened the doors for a lot of the Spanish-speaking jockeys like myself, because he came at a time where it was no, the Spanish-speaking jockeys were not really the top choice, and he came to Maryland and he did extremely well, and that again I feel like opened the doors for a lot of us.
When you transitioned to New York, what was the difference for you? You know, obviously the racing is different in New York, but how was it in your transition from going from the Mid-Atlantic tracks up to, you know, Aqueduct, Belmont, and Saratoga?
Yes, and it was as smooth as it can be, because Steve and I at the time were riding between Delaware in the summer and then going in the winter to Maryland, and then we decided to come in the winter to Aqueduct, and we did very well. And then, but went back to Delaware in the summer. By then, I had established myself as a jockey who was doing very well in these Mid-Atlantic circuits, and learning a lot about how to again connect with the horse. And I felt like I had it. Obviously, once that you feel like you have it, shortly after that, somehow you're gonna hit a slump where you like start questioning how much you really know about the sport. But
I'm humbled every day,
yeah,
believe
gosh,
me.
yes. But coming to New York in the winter, the opportunities were greater in New York around that time than in the summertime when the big guys or the jockeys who had a lot of business will come. But then when we decided to stay year round, I will never forget because there was this idea, and they would label jockeys as a winter jockey in New York. Well, so and so, yeah, he does well, but he's a winter jockey. And the only difference really was that the winter jockey was receiving top mounts, and but then when the summer would come, they were no longer the top choice or even among the top choice.
Sergey Chavez is a perfect example where he would, remember when he was really good and he won a lot of races? It was on the inner dirt track at Aqueduct.
And despite that, he then continued to do well in
Yeah.
the summer. And so, yes, I do believe that in the future, hopefully in the near future, he will be in the Hall of Fame. What he accomplished was incredible. Now, I feel like there was a shift because the so-called the winter jockey, I continued to win races and I continued to dominate in the standings even in the summertime. So there was no such a thing as a label of a winter jockey. I will continue to do well, and Steve and I continue to do well. And that sort of made that transition to where it was a no-brainer to stay in New York. And we were so pleased with how things continue to go for us.
You won the Eclipse Award 3 years in a row, if I'm not mistaken. What, 2011, 12, 13?
10, 11, and 12.
Right. So you've won, I mean, just that is ridiculous. Like to win it three, you won 5,000. What was it? About 5,000?
Almost 4,985. Yeah.
Shoot. Okay. Well, inducted in the Hall of Fame, if I remember, maybe 2015 or 16.
16, yeah.
16. I mean, your trajectory from the days at Hialeah to the Mid-Atlantic to New York is unbelievable. Like we'll talk about the last few years, but if you were riding today, if you kept riding, you're only what, 48 years old?
I'm 47.
47. You'd still be riding today. It would be a record. It would be, we thought Babe Ruth hitting 714, home runs was a record that can't be beat. Well, it was beaten, right? By Henry Aaron and Barry Bonds. But Joe DiMaggio, 56 game winning streak. If you were riding, no one would you would dominate. I mean, even the colonies is strong, every year you get new cast of characters that are really good. But what you accomplished in your career up to your retirement is ridiculous. Like if you were riding now, continuing, look at Mike Smith. He's riding into his 50s. You could ride. If you were riding, you could ride into your 50s. I mean, if you wanted to. You would have set every record that, in my opinion, could never be beaten. It'd be ridiculous, and that's why, to me, when I say the two greatest riders I've ever seen, I've seen a ton of them. Baeza, Shoemaker, Velasquez, from when the days, Jorge Velasquez, from his days at Monmouth as an apprentice. I've seen them all. The one thing, and just tell me if I'm right, kind of on the right path. So if I had to compare you to riders that I've seen, right? But I'm going to tell you the difference between you and them. Willie Shoemaker, Pat Day, to a lesser extent, Corey Lanerie. Let's talk about a middle of the road rider. Like you talk about, you can learn, there's a skill set for even riders that aren't the name riders. Right now, Flavien Prat. What all of you had, Shoemaker, Prat, Pat Day, Delahousse, and you, is an uncanny ability to get balance properly on great soft hands, communication with the horse and the horse's reins to its mouth, right? The bit, how you know, just your communication, but your balance, right? Your timing. But what separated you from them, in my opinion, was the strength of your hands. You had soft hands, but they were strong. And you were able to navigate into a position, moving a horse inside out, getting the horse balanced. You would ride dirt races like riders ride grass races. You would ride the grass the same as the dirt. But grass racing is ridden a little differently. You would time your move, you save your horse, you get covered up. There's a run of maybe an eighth of a mile, 3/16 of a mile. It's you have to time it, find your hole, and go on through. It's different than riding dirt. But you had the ability to be able to ride dirt as great as riders ride grass, but the similar way, because your hands, the way you sat and balanced on the horse and got the horse into a rhythm, found your hole, but covered up, the horse never was asked to run until you asked it to run. And you had relaxed that horse and got that horse so balanced that when you called on, if that horse had something, you were going through and you were winning that race. And trainers that I've spoke to about you say the same thing. When Ramon Dominguez was on my horse, after the race, and I brought him back to the barn, he was fresh as a daisy, like he never ran. Is this what I'm saying? Do you agree with it?
I agree with the second part. I don't agree with the first part, and I'll go in order.
Okay.
So you say a keyword that certainly in my career was incredible. I was so blessed and really beyond what I could have dreamed when it came to the United States. I was so blessed to do so well. Now, what I don't agree with is unfair to say, oh, I would have broken X amount of records, or I would have won X amount of races. Really, I kind of go back and I have to settle with the fact that I won in the United States or North America, including a few races that I won in Canada, 4,185. Hey, my career maybe would have continued to go well, but it's really impossible to predict because the new generation would have come along and maybe I was bound to sort of start slowing down, who knows? But no matter what, I'm extremely grateful with how well things went for me. When you mentioned these jockeys and sort of comparing the styles, and certainly I didn't ride or didn't watch too many times the great Bill Shoemaker, but I do know that he had very good hands, and same can be said with Braulio Baeza, the Iceman. And so certainly I can see a lot of similarities between their style and later on, which I had the opportunity to ride with Pat Day. Same thing, he didn't ask his horses more than he needed to. I believe that there are styles of styles. In all of the approaches, there is a certain level of success when it comes to jockeys like Pat Valenzuela, who was known to really push his horses early on in the race. I remember speaking once with La 15K, and he said that when Pat Valenzuela came to California, and he said, Ramon, he will send horses to the lead, going a mile and a quarter, going 22 and change, and people, oh, he's going to stop. They wouldn't stop. I had to change my style to sort of compensate for what he was doing. So these are things that sort of defies logic, or it's not the norm that these horses are being sent and they continue to last. And then you got guys who, like De La Hussey, who make a living out of just taking them back and making a run. I feel like the style that I developed, and again, a lot has to do with my beginnings and even show jumping, it was the ability to really connect with the horse. And to me, those are principal uh, things when it comes to the ability to connect, that no matter how much the game changes, no matter how much the profession evolves, the new things that the jockeys acquire that work better than the past, connecting with a horse is something that it will be unchanged, because you're listening to your horse, you are just allowing them from the very first jump to relax, and that will lead to you being able to just ask them very little at the end, because they are within themselves really well reserved. And when it comes to riding the grass, and certainly my style, when I rode even the dirt, there was a lot of similarities. It was, I oftentimes rode the races like the grass, because it was key for the horses to relax the early part of the race. A jockey that can be added to that list right now, which I admire very much, and he does ride the dirt a lot of times like the grass, and it's Joel Rosario.
Yeah.
His ability to get a horse to relax is incredible. He will circle the field and they just come flying. A lot of times he doesn't even have to ask them, and he just gets the job done. But it is about connecting with the horse, and he certainly is a master at that.
Well, you connected really well with Gio Ponte. I think you rode 6 Grade 1 wins for Christophe Clement aboard that horse. And, I would say, between Gio Ponte, Better Talk Now, I mean, you've ridden a lot of great horses. I think you rode Tappet, right?
I rode Tape, yep.
And I mean, look at the relationship you had with Gio Ponte. I mean, coming from off the pace, right? I mean, what was he like to ride?
He was a very easy horse to ride. He was push button. He will relax beautifully. I mean, as most horses for Christophe Clement, he does an amazing job training all his horses to precisely that, to, as the European call it, switch off. And that is so key. When they relax the very first time of the race, most horses can give you a 3/16 of a mile, but it's beautiful when they haven't fought with you the first part, and they're just waiting for your command or for that cue, and you say, okay, time to go, and they just take off. And so Gio Ponte was very easy to ride like that. The very first horse that I had the opportunity to connect, and perhaps the first good horse that I rode, it was the horse by the name Fibera Dog. Bob Leonard was a trainer, Dennis Foster, the owner, and we won the Virginia Derby at Colonial Downs. We won actually the Saranac Stake in Saratoga, and at a time, record time, he won the mile in 3:16, and that's a record that still stands. But it was doing that, getting him to relax, and I didn't have to hit him, didn't have to move my hands. So that was sort of the beginning of my style, getting to be known about really just having hands of getting a horse to relax and just getting the best out of them the last part.
I'll tell you a horse, like one of your greatest rides of all time, in my opinion. It was Little Mike in the Breeders' Cup Turf for Carlo Vaccarazza. This was a miler that wanted the front end, always the front end. Reminded me a little bit like of Bold Forbes when Cordero stole the horse. He was able to stretch out. Remember, Bold Forbes was a miler, and Cordero was able to nurse his speed and steal the race on the front end, stretching out to 1.5 miles in Belmont. But here you are on Little Mike. He's 17-1 in the Breeders' Cup Turf. And no one thought he was going to carry his speed, the distance, on the front end. I picked him on my sheet. He was one of my top plays that year on the Breeders' Cup, because what I wrote was, I don't think he's going to the front in this race. I think in order to get the distance, Ramon Dominguez is going to take him back a little bit, get him relaxed and stalk, and move to the lead at the top of the lane. He's going to reserve enough horse that to get the distance, he's going to have to, he wants to see what's in front of him. He doesn't want to be the one everyone's chasing. I just had a feeling that you were going to stalk with little Mike, and you did. And the result was a winner for you, the connections and the wizard. And that to me was a memory of a horse that was such a good horse.
That is a great race to give us an example of the importance of listening to a horse. And it was a little bit different of your prediction, which your prediction came to be true about that I was going to stalk them because the horse was a miler. The truth is that my number one plan was to go to the lead. So I started the race, and certainly we had two things against us. We had a miler going a mile and a half, but also he was a horse that with a track record proven to whenever he made the lead, he was tough. So again, with the added distance, I thought that it was fairly easy, or I was going to try to go and make the lead. And sure enough, I came away from there with all the intentions to make the lead. However, I wasn't the only one with that plan. Turbo Compressor with Joe Bravo went to the lead, and it was clear at that moment that he was committed. So if I had followed my plans, or perhaps the instructions of the trainer, and do what the paper suggests, that hey, maybe you go to the lead, it would have been chaotic, the outcome. Right. So it wasn't that I said, well, you know what, we're gonna go there. No, I'm listening to my horse. My horse is really trying harder than he needs to in order to sustain that type of pace for a mile and a half, which again, there was this unknown whether he will go the distance regardless of how well the setup was. But I had to allow him to relax, and that's something that most happen early on in the race. If a quarter of a mile went by and then now you decide to, well, we went too fast, it's too late. It's too late. Right. The damage is done. So I took a hold and said, okay, just relax for me. And thank God that the horse just listened to me, came back, and I'm in a beautiful spot right behind two horses, but at the mercy of the pace and hoping for the best. Because at that point, you don't really know, even if your horse is going the right way, you don't know if past a half mile that he's like, okay, I'm done. It could happen, but that wasn't the case. He continued bringing me alone, and then turning for home, I'm like, oh my gosh, I still have a chance. And sure enough,
you took the lead. You got the lead.
I made the lead at that point. Obviously, you are expecting some of these European and
the
some of these
favorite's coming to you.
Yes,
it's coming.
John Velasquez is coming, and but he switched leads, and I said, okay, we got something. So thank God. But again, it wasn't my plan, and it was the fact that I did what was right by the horse and listened to him, and he listened to me as well.
That's what made you one of the greatest riders of all time, because you were able to make those judgments early on. Because if you would have made it and used your horse early in the race, then decided to take back after a quarter mile, you're dead. You're not going to hold on. But you had that instinct and feel to make that adjustment, call an audible in your head, and that is what you've done countless times throughout your career. It's your ability. It's not your physical ability or of course, the communication with the horse, your hands, your balance, right? But your mind and your instincts and feel. You can't teach that. It's like great athletes. I do what I do. I pick horses for a living, and I've done it for over 40 years. But it's instincts. It's a feel. I can get all the information I want, right? I can go to the backstretch. I can hear this one here. Do my research, right? But in the end, it's a crossword puzzle, and it's a mishmash. And I have to decide what is important at what time and how to use it. So when you have your great rides, and there's many that were even on a cheap claimer, I'm like, oh, what a ride, right? It's your instincts built up, and you either have that or you don't. You have to combine the mind with the physical attributes, right?
I must say that I'm very impressed because you have paid a great deal of attention to little details that maybe escapes the naked eye when it comes to watching a race, and you certainly notice things that are important. This I have had conversation actually with Pat Day about, because he's a believer that he was blessed to have this talent, and I think that a lot of it is something that you acquire with time as well when you pay attention by trial and error, and that was the case for my style, where many things sort of come then intuitively, like you don't have to think about it. You can sort of see the way the race is developing, and you can anticipate these horses are going to come back into me. But more important than anything is, again, for this horse to relax. So I had a conversation after my retirement, because had we had this conversation when I was still riding, so many things I was doing out of just second nature. I just did it so many times that I just knew what I had to do, and there was not really even a conscious thought behind it. I just knew what had to be done. If that makes sense, it just came in the moment, and I just knew that's what I needed to do. But then after my retirement, I had the opportunity to stop and sort of analyze as to the why. Why was it that this worked and not? And then I spoke with Joel Rosario. As I mentioned, I admire him greatly, and we both had the ability to get a horse to relax and for the horses to really come running. And I say, Joel, I don't know if you agree with me, but it is a must for when we connect with a horse, that has to happen in the very first jump. And we expand on that conversation, and we were on the same page, because if I do what needs to be done in some races, in certain cases when maybe it's a short race and you need really to establish position and you kind of move your hands, it is very, very unlikely that you will win in hand, because you lost touch with that horse. Now, this connection is a little more mechanical, that, okay, horse, I just need you to stay here, and you continue to, but when from the first jump, and the horse has been conditioned to go, and he wants to go a little faster than he needs to, and you just take a hold, and then you feel the horse relax, you got him. And that's basically what Joel Rosario does when he's able to connect with his horses and make these big runs.
I'm going to tell you something else and tell me if I'm right or wrong. Every athlete, especially, we'll talk just about riders, but athletes in general, the race is a very stressful time. The start, the gate, out of the gate to the finish, it's stressful. But the great riders like you, and I'm going to apply this assumption to you, you kind of were able to slow your heart rate down. Like, you didn't go, you know how you get into stressful situations. And I know with me, I want to keep an even keel. Throughout the day, watching a race, I can pick a bad horse and he loses. I can pick a great winner, but I never want to be my heart racing. I want to be able to slow my heart rate down, which gives me the ability to get into the zone. Okay? Because once your heart rate starts accelerating, you're kind of outside the perimeter of the zone that you want to be in. It's basically, you want to shut everything. Obviously, you're riding a race and you see all your competition, but they're outside your peripheral. They're there, but you're just focusing in on the rhythm of the horse, your relationship with the horse, and a calmness. Because by being calm yourself, you're passing on that trait, that feeling to the horse. If you're anxious, you may tug on the reins too hard. You may be forcing the bit too hard on the mouth. But when you're in a zone and your heart rate is level, it's when it all works. Is that something am I?
100%. Now, the low high rate is actually not something that you consciously say, oh, you know what, I'm going to be calm. You can try to practice that, but typically when you get to be in the zone And that is not something that you necessarily choose. I wish it was that easy. You say, I'm going to be in the zone. It's just when your actions continue to be going into the right direction, and all of a sudden you hit the sweet spot and you're in the zone, which doesn't happen that often,
No.
but it's the most amazing thing. And the low heart rate is a byproduct of being in the zone.
Yes.
And by being in the zone, the race will develop in front of you at a slow motion rate. It is incredible. Things happen, or you can predict what's going to happen before it happens, and you are completely detached from the outcome. And it is so awesome. This is going to sound crazy, but when you know you're going to win before
It's the greatest feeling.
the greatest feeling ever.
It's like, you know, my wife's a teacher, special ed teacher. And when she gets into a zone, she's connecting with a child, right? And there's a connection, and it doesn't happen to every child. And so it's not just horse racing, it's every job, anything you do, it's getting into that, and you see everything in it clear, and it's not going fast. You've plugged into that, you know, in your case, a horse, right? It's like with children, you know, not every minute you're going to connect with your child, right? But when you have those moments, you know, I remember I took my family away for vacation for a week to Rhode Island, and I had all our grandkids, all the kids. I rented a house, and there were moments with, like, I remember my grandson in the water, doesn't like the water, but he was on a boogie board, and I'm holding him up, and I'm, you know, calling him Boogeyman, right? A boogie boy, and like he's feeling confident on the board, right? And it was like I was connecting. I was in a zone with him. And it's the greatest feeling when you can get into that zone.
Is the most amazing and most incredible experience. I tell you, whenever I made a mistake riding, uh, and I will reflect back always after the races and kind of, okay, why did I make that mistake? And 9 out of 10 times while doing that analysis, it was that I was being too aggressive. I was trying to push things, and perhaps I was going through a slump, which happens to all
of us.
athletes. But typically, when you're going through a slump, then you want to make it happen, and you try to put the horse a little bit closer because it is a competitive sport, and sometimes we sort of gravitate towards being aggressive, but that doesn't work. When I was in the zone again, oftentimes it didn't matter how the race was going to develop because I just knew that I was going to win. And it's the most amazing experience. Now, the same applies to the horse. When a lot of people like to see the horses like on their feet and like on their toes and really excited. But when I rode especially a young horse that didn't know what was happening and he was too excited and he would run poorly, if the next time I went to ride him and that horse happened to be calm, I was like, okay, we're into something good here.
Right.
Sure enough, this horse will come running and do well. So yeah.
So you decide, you know, you have that injury, a bad fall, and your doctor tells you, you know, you really shouldn't ride anymore, and you make the decision. This was what, how many years ago?
11 and a half.
To the day you could probably figure the minute, you know, and you decide, you know, I want to live, you know, I want to, I have a family. How many kids do you have?
2 boys.
When you retired, how old were they born?
Yeah. They were 7 and 8.
7 and 8.
Mhm.
So, you know, you have to make the biggest decision of your life, you know, and we all as human beings go through major decisions that we can go one way or the other, but the process, you know, I mean, I've, you know, had a traumatic experience, and I threw myself into therapy, did a lot of soul searching. Every day was hard. You know, it took me a while to come out of it, you know, and You know, a lot of it I kept to myself. I had a couple friends I would talk to, you know, but it was something that I had to live with personally and get over that hump, which didn't happen overnight. It was freaking hard. When you decided to leave the game, what was, you know, like how, I'm sure it was so hard, and what was your process to, because I'm sure you're happy, you know, you've found a life after, but what was the process? How hard was that for you?
You know, I'm very happy, and I think that if it was completely my decision, that would have been a lot more difficult. I would have been pulled to go get back on the horse. I feel like the decision was made for me. All along after my injury, I was planning on coming back and sort of counting the days to get back on the horse. And when the time came, all of my doctors, all the neurologists that I saw, told me, you can't do this anymore. You cannot afford to hit your head again. And so, again, it wasn't a decision anymore on my behalf. It wasn't okay, because the reality of the danger and the nature of the profession is that you're bound to hit your head again. So it wasn't, if it was as big of a injury as my last one, but any hit or any type of impact on my head was going to be, the outcome will not be the same than before. So um, despite that, when you come into terms, okay, I'm not gonna do this anymore, you can help to feel certain, you feel a little bit sort of identity with your profession. So that is what is difficult at first, because whether you want it or not, in your mind, you were this professional. In my case, I was the jockey that was doing well. And also, it needs to be considered that when this happened, it's not that I was kind of going through the motions and riding here and there. I was doing very well. I was really at the peak of my career. So that makes it a little bit more difficult, but at the same time, I was blessed to be alive and to be doing well. So, but the detachment from the professional Ramon Dominguez to the actual person, which has no attachment to what I did for a living, is something that takes a little bit of time. But I had the greatest support from family and my wife and friends, and in what seems like relatively short amount of time, I was able to turn the page and look at that with a lot of joy when I look back at my days as a jockey.
Did you leave the game like for a little bit, just not wanting to have anything to do with racing?
I did, and honestly, if I was up to me, it would have taken a long, long time for me to go back to the track, because it was a little bit painful to go and be there. My wife, I think it was the following season, we were here in Sato. I said, nope, we're going to the track. No, I'm not ready. No, we're going to go to the track. Come on, Ramon. So I went somewhat against my will, and I'm glad that I did, especially that early after my retirement, because
How long after?
so yeah, it was the following season. I got hurt in January of 2013, and actually was that summer of 2013 here in Saratoga that I went to the track, went to the jocks room, and then after that, it was a lot easier to come to the track.
What have you done? Like what, since you've retired? I know you have, I don't exactly know what you're doing, but I know you play a big part, as I would refer to as a great ambassador of the game, whatever that mean, like what that, I don't know what that means to you. The ambassador just came to mind, and I've seen it being said, but what have you done like since?
Yes, I have done a few things. One of them, I decided to act upon an idea that I had to create a more humane riding crop, and I developed that with the help of a friend, a jockey, Carlos Marquez, who rides in Louisiana, and that has gone well. And
Are you selling? Are you actually
yes,
have a business? So it's the crop. You change. Is it? Did you make it less length?
no, the area that has the contact with the horse, what we refer to as the popper, the last part of the crop, instead of being leather zone on the corners, it is a cylindrical foam that has a very good shock absorption, makes noise, which is a way to incentivize the horse, but it doesn't really cause any pain. So yeah, that is the main difference between that and what is being used really in all equestrian sports. A lot of the show jumping riders are now taking a look and utilizing this as well. So yeah.
So you have a business?
Yes, we
like
have a
actual-
business. Yeah, correct. Yeah.
And is it doing well?
It's doing well. Yes. For a while we were sort of the only one that jockeys were using. Nowadays, the rules have changed where HISA has opened it up where they can use the previous one as well. But we have continued to sell quite a few, and yeah, that has been a good business. Simultaneously, when you are growing this sport, you can help it, but it's become sort of a part of you. It's a huge family, a big community, and so anything that I can do to improve the sport is something that come easy for me. Helping the permanently disabled jockeys phone or anything to do with aftercare. So I have also served the last 5 years as the president of the board of the New York Racetrack Chaplaincy, which is an amazing organization that
What do you
support-
do? What do you do?
So again, I'm the president, and the board comprises also of the chairman is Terry Finley, who is an incredible
Head of West
West
Point.
Point. Yes, he's an amazing individual with great ideas, out of the box thinker, and so we have been able to really help the organization with new ideas to bring new money and basically free the hands of the people who are out there working and helping, supporting the backstage employees. So that's something that is brings a lot of joy to me as well.
And you moved your family from Long Island to Saratoga. You bought a house several years ago, right?
Yes, and it was actually 17 years ago. I was still active as a jockey. We had a few dollars that we wanted to invest, and we ended up buying this property. And after my retirement, there was nothing that was really tying us to Long Island, and we certainly like the lifestyle here in Saratoga. So we decided to move here 6 years ago, and we love it.
So when racing goes back downstate, you're here with your family, right?
I'm here with my family, and I'm freezing in the winter as well.
Oh, you don't go, you stay here because the kids are in school.
Correct,
Are they,
yes.
so they must be in high school?
Yes, one just graduated from high school, and the other one finished high school last year. He's working right now, so yeah.
So what's your day like at Saratoga? Like when there's no racing, you're not really doing any work in racing, you're just here.
Yes, I am somewhat. I'm working on two projects. There is always something going on. Two projects
Like
within the sport, which I'm excited about. Not ready to talk about it yet, but God willing, that will come to fruition. And but my day begins by getting up early and going for a run. I love running. I took that after my retirement, and it's sort of my meditation time, and that just energizes me and kind of
The knees are holding up.
the knees are doing great, and yes, it's I absolutely love it. Everything, knock on wood, has been going great health wise.
Did you ever run a marathon?
No marathon. I have run quite a few 5Ks and a couple 10Ks as well. Maybe a marathon in the
Is that
future.
something you would like to do?
Yes, yes. I just need to increase my mileage and talk to a gentleman by the name Bob Lane who has been coaching me, and just change a few things to be able to go the distance.
So then you'd have to go 26 miles and pick your spot in the lane, move, relax yourself. Like you just make believe you're riding Geopont. A little
100%.
Mike, like, okay, I'm going to, think about it like a horse race, right?
And that is absolutely the truth. And there are so many similarities between running a foot race and riding a race. But now I have to put my money where my mouth is, because when I'm the horse now, is getting tired, I'm like, no, you're not that tired yet. Come on, we got another couple miles to go.
Are you allowed to ride the marathon with your whip?
I'm not, but I don't need a whip. Remember, I didn't use it too much, so no, I'm just trying to pace myself, which typically I try to go out a little too fast. That's one thing that I'm working on.
Yeah, you got to pace yourself, especially going, even any distance.
Yeah.
Got to get nice and relaxed.
Sure.
Well, I appreciate you coming on the show. It was just an honor to have you. You're like one of the people I've just my whole career, you stand out like the bright light, and like, the bright bulb in my life, and just, you gave me a lot of pleasure watching you. I mean, I don't know what else, to say other than, thank you for taking your time out and, doing this. I mean, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
Very much. Thank you so much for having me. I absolutely love this time. Anytime that we talk about racing is something that I'm extremely passionate about. And thank you for your kind words, which I think that you're somewhat stretching the truth when it comes to me as a jockey, but we'll
No,
leave it
no,
at that.
I think you just, I think you're just a very humble person, but I know what I see with my eyes. I mean,
Thank you.
I'm trained my whole life doing this. So I'm not just a casual person watching. I've watched thousands, hundreds of thousands of races and watch, everything, So what I say is the truth. You may not buy it, but too bad, Ramon.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Yeah, thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
It's time for us to ship out.
That's
for
right.
this week's Get Tied On. Michael, you hinted in the open that there are at least 3 topics for this closing commentary: dead heats, DQs, and
The integrity of
the
the
integrity
game.
of the game. So let's talk about the dead heat. I will tell you, I was standing in a clubhouse when the dead heat sign. The dead heat sign came up.
Right.
And I was standing next to a gentleman who was happy because he actually had it both ways. And then when they took the DH down, he had a meltdown.
Yeah.
Not because of how it was going to affect his play, but he just says you cannot do that to the public.
When I had Lisa Lazarus on last year, I applauded her for her work with her staff in trying to protect the integrity of our game. All of it is basically medication infractions. I said it was going to be growing pains. You were going to make mistakes, but in time, I believe it's going to work if it's done right. But I also explained to her that the integrity of the game is a lot more than medication. It's about the optics of how the public, especially the betting public, who are not really held in high regard and should be, because the betting public are the backbone of the game. They support the game. But there's an integrity piece to that. When you have bad takedowns, margin, like we saw in the last race, a 25-1 shot was taken down brainstorming. You can make a case both ways. I don't think they should have taken the horse down. And the point is not the takedown so much as the consistency. That if the stewards are going to take down horses like that, they have to be consistent. And there's a lot of infractions which we see that are worse than that and are left up. So there's the optics, the bad optics, and the perception from the betting public that causes people to be upset about it. But that one wasn't that bad. What was really bad was the dead heat, debacle. In the third race, James Bond clearly won with Russie. There was a photo finish for second and third. You couldn't, the inside, the way the camera angle was, unless you saw the picture, which they later showed for 5 seconds, the inside horse won the bob. It wasn't a bob, it was a nose, but it was a clear nose. You have a line, they developed the picture, and you can see the horse got second by a nose. They waited 7 minutes to determine the outcome, and they posted a dead heat. Now, 7 minutes, they develop the film, they look at the film, they look at the line, and based on the picture that we saw after when they did post it for 5 seconds with no explanation, they decided they put up the dead heat, right?
Right.
So now everybody is saying, oh yeah, we cash both ways. We win the race with 2 exactas, you're getting half the money. But the idea is if you had the 6, right, you cashed. So they wait another minute and they take down the dead heat and they put the 3 as this getting the place money and the 6 third money. What do they? There's no explanation at all about why after 6 or 7 minutes, okay, that you look at a photo and you call it a dead heat. It wasn't a dead heat. Anyone that could see that shot. So what I'm saying is, I was down in the grandstand area. The people were booing. I mean, people were in disgust. You know, especially if you think you're cashing and you're not. You know, it's like taking money out of your pocket.
Well, it reminded me of a Saturday Night Live weekend update spot where Emily Litella goes on a rant and then looks into the camera and says, "Never mind." Essentially what the Stews did was say, "Never mind. Oops, never mind."
I think that a proper explanation to the mistake. What we all make mistakes.
We should have heard something from Frank Mermati.
It's owning to the mistake. There's an error made.
Yeah.
You know, it's like human beings, like husbands and wives. We make mistakes. You own your mistake, right?
Wait a minute. My wife is sitting here and she'll attest to I never, ever make mistakes.
Okay.
Won't you, dear?
I catch you making about 5 mistakes a day, okay? And I
Now you're talking about my handicapping. Now just stop this stuff.
So, okay, I mean, I have nothing more to say other than that the optics didn't look good. It wasn't
No, I mean, the most interesting thing is the statement at the top, really, that it's not more evidence that more often than not they make decisions in a way that suggests that they really don't care about the people who are betting. And that's the worst thing.
And who are these placing judges? Like, I'd like to know what their qualifications are and if they need to go to an optometrist and get their eyes checked. Because, I mean, you know, a blind squirrel could have determined that it was a nose win on the second horse.
Take it
anyway.
easy, brother. Okay. Well, we want to thank you for joining us on Get Tied On. We're brought to you by Wizard Racing Sports, and you can watch us always at the Wizards Thoroughbred Racing channel on YouTube. Thank you so much.
Visit wizardracingsports.com and purchase now. Since 1986, the Wizard has been your source for the best handicapping products for the always challenging Saratoga meet. Wizard selections include analysis and wagering strategies for every race. Wagers are updated after late scratches. The Wizard wagers every day, backing up his opinions with his own money. Visit wizardracingsports.com and purchase now.